Father, the thought that kept going through my mind as you were talking about, do you have an idea, is there some idea about how old she might have been when her parents died?
My understanding is somewhere around the age of 8 to 10 when she lost her parents.
All right, now think about how remarkable that was. This was the thought. And we don't realize the influence that we have on our children. The first 8 years of her life, her mother brought her the gospel, brought her the Catholic faith. And even though she went amongst her people and she served them, I'm sure she loved them, I'm sure they had a wonderful relationship, there was that longing for that which had been planted in her heart by her mother, and that was Jesus. So although her relatives had a belief in a greater spirit, and that may be another name that they gave to God, she wanted more.
The call of God in Kateri's heart became so strong, and her striving for virtue, despite her family's disagreement with her. In fact, her aunts seemed to have given her quite a hard time while living here on this property. It was during that time that she greatly interiorized her life and apparently completely turned it over to Christ, and which makes it a very striking story, given the fact her culture at that time gave no support to it. And in Kateri's case, she would pull back a bit. Her illness gave her the opportunity for space and time, but she was very generous in offering her efforts when they were gathering crops from the field or when they were preparing the meats for storage for wintertime and smoking. She cooperated as much as she could. And yet, as family members can sometimes do, they have hopes for their children, desires for their future, and they try to affect things around them so as to have them live out the life they're hoping for. And it seems to be more of a conflict in that area. That Kateri was not as willing to just simply go along with their desires. It was rather she was discerning this inner call of God and choosing to give her life totally to Christ. And in that inner choice, not that she was always conscious of it, but as she did become aware of it, she made it a point to devote her time, attention, whole prayer life, her whole life, in fact, to God.
I noticed up on the beam here that it says Kateri refuses forced marriage. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
We know that in 1676, one of her aunts had made an arrangement secretly behind her back to have another warrior come and marry her. And he came, and one of the ceremonial offerings to indicate her interest in him was for her to cook a meal and then offer it to him. And by his accepting it and then giving her a gift in return, it would have been a proposal of marriage. And in the course of the meal, she suddenly put two and two together. And what we try to depict in one of these murals is her not being aware of this marriage proposal taking place during this ceremonial dinner. Suddenly becoming aware of it, she simply stood up and left the room.
When the Jesuits came into her midst, Kateri gravitated toward them and their teaching.
She was isolated from the other natives, but she was complete with her Lord, who she was mystically embracing. She began to take on the cross. When Father Lambertville came into the village, Kateri told him of her desire to become a Catholic. Hoping this would bring her out of her solitude, she received permission from her uncle to receive instructions in the faith. But he cautioned her to be careful. He was afraid of the reaction from the rest of the tribe because of her position as his adopted daughter. The day of her baptism finally arrived. All of the Mohawk village turned out to see the chief's adopted daughter accepting the religion of the Black Robes on Easter Sunday. This could be a giant step for the Black Robes. Father named Kateri after Catherine of Siena, the great mystic. Little did he know how prophetic that would be. Kateri was 20 years old.
After her baptism, she became more and more contemplative and consequently more removed from the other young people. She suffered deeply when she saw them practicing pagan rituals. As she drew closer to Jesus, the brutality as well as the pursuit of the flesh, which was so ingrained in the culture of her people, became unbearable. This further alienated her from the young people. They responded with anger and cruelty, completely intolerant of her lifestyle, and now to the point of possibly posing a danger to her. One of the things that infuriated the older as well as the younger members of the tribe was her always fingering and saying the rosary. Even her relatives told her to put it away. As she got closer to Jesus, she grew closer to his mother.
She was no longer called Tekakwitha, but mockingly the Christian. A young warrior attacked her, threatening to kill her if she did not stop her Christian ways. Father Lambertville started to see the danger this posed for Kateri.
Rumor had been among all the different tribes that they would not be accepted among the Onondagas, the Senecas, many of them. So they gathered and set down a village life outside of the city of Montreal. They were known in those days as the group of the Praying Indians. They were all Christians and very warm and welcoming. One of the tribal chiefs who became a Christian and joined that group was so moved by the experience of being there, and he had heard rumor of Kateri's experience here at our shrine, that he came down in secret with two braves in order to help her to get away so that she would have the freedom to express openly her love for Christ and to live it around those who would support her completely. And hence, one night...
So she left, just her and the two, the Indian and the brave left for Canada.
The uncle was furious. Fearing Kateri had been kidnapped, he loaded his gun and took out after the braves who had assisted Kateri's escape. When he approached, he found the brave casually smoking. He never saw Kateri, who was safely hidden in a tree trunk.
Kateri's move to the praying village did not deliver her from the persistent nagging of well-meaning family insisting she marry. She went to Father Cholanek, who assured her she was free to choose a life of aversion and that the mission would defend her right. Kateri had learned about the saints from the black robes. She wanted to be close to Jesus as his spouse, as the saints had before her. Kateri went to Father and told him that she desired to be the Lord's bride on earth for the short time she had left. Father granted her wish.
On March the 25th, 1679, Kateri Tekakwitha became the first Native American to consecrate herself, her virginity, her purity, her very soul to Jesus. Kateri began to show the signs of the great mystics before her. She could be spotted by her family and other members of the tribe praying, motionless, lost to everything and everyone around her. The natives noticed the change that came about her. She was, like the holy saints before, among them physically, but it was obvious she was not spiritually there, but somewhere beyond.
Kateri knew death was near. She was ready to go home to her spouse, to live with him as his servant eternally. The Indians began visiting her, asking for guidance and counsel. Her body, weakened by the great mortification she had inflicted upon herself, was racked with pain. The priests brought her the viaticum, or as we say today, they bestowed on her the sacrament of the healing of the sick. Kateri asked to be dressed in the finest clothes, as at last she would receive her spouse in Holy Communion. She had longed for this moment, as Saint Therese the Little Flower said, for that first kiss from Jesus. After she received her first Holy Communion, the members of the mission filed in, taking turns, keeping vigil with her, their dying sister, who they never quite understood, but got to love.
When they laid Kateri's still body on the pallet, no longer was there a face pockmarked by smallpox, a body twisted and darkened by pain. Instead, her skin lightened. It became clear, without scars. She was not only serene, she was beautiful. Two Frenchmen who had known Kateri came and inquired who was the beautiful maiden who was asleep on the pallet. When Father Cholanek informed them that it was Kateri, they knelt beside her and wept. As word spread through the colonies via the two Frenchmen, everyone exclaimed as one, "The saint is dead." Miracles began at once. The sick were healed, the lame walked.
Father Choquetier was the first she appeared to 6 days after she was buried. Kateri was radiant. In one hand, she had a church upside down, and in the other, a Native American tied to a burning stake. The priest did not understand what she was saying until 3 years later, when a tornado hit the church and turned it upside down. The second prophecy was to come to pass when the Onondagas attacked the mission during a war between the tribes. An Iroquois Christian was captured and burned at the stake. The second one, Kateri, appeared to was her adopted mother, Anastasia. She said that she saw a beautiful Kateri beside her holding a shining cross. She told Anastasia that she had loved the cross while on earth and loved it even more in heaven.
One of the things that we do know is if Blessed Kateri is made a saint, she would be the first native-born Native American Indian to become a saint in the church. And that's what we're hoping and praying for, not only here, but at her shrine that's up in Canada, Kanawaki Reservation, where Father James Jacques Brier is also promoting her cause for the Jesuits.